today that doesn't know me. My name is Bob Baser. I am the office manager here at First Decision. In today's training, we have a licensed appraiser who's been doing this for a while. So hopefully he's going to get up here, tell us what the process is, tell us what they look for. We'll open it up to questions and answers. And I think one of the big things that everyone is really interested in is finding out how you challenge these appraisals that come in. Sometimes they come in lower than what we expect. And I think it's good to talk to an appraiser to find out how you can always get the highest value possible and what they look for. If you can think like these guys, then you can probably price like these guys or get pretty close to it. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Mon.
To stand up?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, basically the process here I put down on the first page. This is just a overview of what any appraiser, like there's 8 different steps. We're not here to become an appraiser, but we are just like give you an idea of what the appraisers go through. All the way from step 1 to step 8. They're identical. You can go through this obviously, but there's different steps. First of all, identify the problem. There's different. The report I have passed on to you. This is kind of a unique property because they call it like a White House, a replica of a White House. If you go through the picture, you'll see they try to copy the White House. And I did the this is in McLean, and I did the report because obviously you can't really compare it to another White House. So there's like a whole bunch of White House around the in the nationwide. So this is just one of them in Virginia. So the challenge was how to compare, step 1, which was like identifying the problem, how to compare this kind of a structure, which is it's more like a building to me, like a 2-story single-family detached house, but they have a like a value to it in reference to the White House. So it's the living area is kind of a huge. So the living area around the neighborhood, McLean, you can easily find properties like these, but but the stigmata attached to it is just because it looks like a White House doesn't mean it is a White House. Just like like a gold, there's an ancient gold, and there's like a just the brick of gold. So you go to the jeweler, they'll just give you the gold value. They want so they want they're not looking for where it's coming from, which country. So same thing. This is just a building, and I found a value based on the square footage and the characteristic of how many rooms, basement, and so forth. So going this is just the first step, and then you go do the inspection. Basically, look inside, what kind of condition the property is in, from inside and outside. Draw floor plan, take pictures, and you go back and do your search after. Most appraisers, they do research after they looked at the property, and then come up with comparables, which is part of the like a detailed report. So in this report, I found there are not many comparables. So whatever is similar in terms of the square footage and the condition, I found that and then minus, made the adjustment plus or minus.
So if you don't mind me asking, so whenever you have, I guess, properties that are hard to find comps for, right? Because it's not like a regular community where everything's the same. You guys then will look at the square footage to find similar properties?
Right, like sometimes it's a unique, like especially in DC, like the
Right.
Colorama area.
Exactly.
You have like a multi-million-dollar row house, or it used to be an embassy or some kind of.
Right.
So these kind of unique properties, you have to find something unique or similar to it You don't have to go, compare that, like a mansion row house.
Right.
Go to another, ORCD number 1 or ORCD number 2 and, find comps from there. It's just that, at least try to find something similar to that, towards that, to bring the value to it. So the complexity is the issue where you won't find exactly same property, but try to find similar to it.
Right.
So that's the challenge of finding the step 1, which is identifying the problem, and step 2 is how you're gonna determine the value of it. Because sometimes there's nothing there; it's just the vacant land, and it's a new construction. So you're gonna find what kind of a report is suitable in this situation. So that's step 2. Step 3 is coming to your desk and collecting the data, doing your research basically, and and step 4 is analyzing the problem. Once you have found all your gathered all your data and research, and then you come up with the how you're gonna complete the report or put together basically. And in my opinion, step 5 is rarely used, but it's mostly it's called site value opinion, but it's more towards the vacant land properties. In the appraisal report, there is a section which is a minor section, which is not like a concentrated section. It's just like few paragraphs. It talks about the opinion of site value. So you don't go in detail into it. It's just what do you think of the value surrounding the neighborhood if the property was a vacant land. So you don't, like I said, you don't concentrate too much of it, because you're most of the time you're doing the value of the improvement which is already there. So the land value is important, but it's not like the main subject of it.
I have a question. Say you have two properties, the houses are the same, but one's lot, and say the lot square footage is very close, almost the same. But suppose one lot is substantially better than the other lot, like one may be full of hills, the other one may be flat.
Yeah, it's if you look at it, the lot square size you're looking at, I'm looking at from appraisal point of view. Lot square size is obviously is important. If you were to compare 1 acre lot to maybe 16,000 square feet, then obviously you make adjustment. And you also make adjustment of a topography, like what you just mentioned, rolling hill, or if it's level.
Right.
You make adjustment for that.
Okay.
But in order to find that, what's the difference between the rolling hill and the level topography, you have to do search of all the sales that's been happening within maybe past 3 years of similar houses, of course, if you can find it within that same topography. So you group them basically. One group is all the houses similar to square footage and everything characteristic in one group, and the other ones are like level ground. So and then I don't want to say the word average, but you kind of find the mean of these two sales, and then you come up with the value, land, the adjustment value in that sense. So, but you have to distinguish, because they're not the same, and obviously every location is different. So the level ground is separate, and the hills it's separate, but it's kind of rare. You're not going to find a lot of these metropolitan or Washington D.C. area I'm talking about. If you go up in western West Virginia towards that hilly side, there's that's pretty common. But in this sense, when you go to Washington D.C., Northern Virginia, it's not a lot of these properties, but
You got Flint Hills over here.
yeah, I'm talking about Washington D.C. mostly. Definitely, yeah, I mean, if you have like I described to you, like you do make adjustment for that, of course. But typically, in my micro market area, this is rare, because I don't go that out far. People are who are expert in their, area, they better do that.
Sorry,
instead.
is it fair to say then, because it almost sounds as though you're going to grade it differently based on like the location norm, right? So like what she's talking about near McLean, in the McLean area, where it is kind of hilly, and then the land that the house is built on is relatively flat.
Maybe flat
But then
compared to
back
someone
of it,
else's
yeah.
may not be.
But
Exactly,
I think you're gonna, in that situation, if I'm not mistaken, is that something where you're just gonna look at the surrounding sales and say, hey, who has somewhat similar?
Right, but don't forget, I mean, you're not talking about like one house like sitting all the way on the top of
Right.
the hill and the other one sitting on the ground level.
Right,
Most of these houses are, somewhat similar in terms of topography.
okay.
So, if you're, I haven't seen anything, like way up high in the hill.
No, it's not gonna be way up. high.
Exactly, so
It's
stuff,
gonna be
most of
rolling.
these are like similar in terms of topography, unless it's a big difference, then you have to go, uniquely define
Mhm.
what the situation is, but in a sense where it's, it's typically normal, not like a, crazy high or
Right,
crazy
right.
low, then, it's, you just look at the, square footage of the lot, and then, or make adjustment in that sense.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so that's, so that's where we were in terms of the site opinion, And, I guess the last one was, application of the cost approach, I think we talked about.
The cost approach, is that for, oh, that's just rebuilding it, I assume.
Exactly, for the insurance purposes,
Okay.
they have a reproduction cost and then the replacement cost, they're two different costs. So do you know anything about that?
Yeah,
No,
right.
right, okay. So the replacement cost, mostly the insurance people, like the companies, if the house breaks down, they wanna know the replacement cost. And the replacement cost is the similar house, basically, maybe, similar house built newer version, ground up. And the reproduction cost is, if, let's say the house was built in, 19th century, like a unique house, Victorian era house, and everything was unique in it, and, so they want everything replica of it, which is more expensive. Meaning, like the fireplace and the chandelier, the vaulted ceiling, they want exact replica. And if it were to burn down, you can't place a value on it, but they want at least the similar style. So that's the difference between these two. The replacement and reproduction, they're like, two opposite ends. Alright.
Usually replacement cost lower than the value of the house, or it's
Yeah,
also-
exactly, yeah, because
What the percentage, like how?
to be honest, I haven't done anything like this because those are kind of rare. Like, let's say, like talking about White House, for instance, just give an example. If the White House burns down, for example, which might had happened in the past, you cannot find a value, how much is the White House worth. So basically, that would be a reproduction cost. You're, making everything the way it
Exactly the
was
same, yeah.
before it burned down. So the replacement would be, just make another house, similar to it, but doesn't have to be exact replica of it. The basement, the bathroom might be different location, the bedroom might be different location, but same structure. That's the only difference. So this is mostly for the insurance purposes, they wanna know the value of it, vice versa. Alright, I think this is just the value process, how the appraiser come up with it. So lastly, we don't, the number 7 would be reconciliation, like you come, after you gather all the information, you come up with the value basically. Like I said, we're not gonna go in much detail because it's not appraisal class, it's just the overview. So this is some of the value process. I don't know how because when agents, they talk about the value, they look at it differently than the appraisal, because when I talk to the agents, they say the condition basically is the important in terms of the coming up with a value for the agents in the real estate agents, seller or the buyer. But for the appraisal purpose, that does count, it comes under condition, but it's more, we're basically looking at the, sales within the neighborhood and what's sold. If the same house sold on the other block for the same price, and it's the same structure, same living area, same site size, same garage, whatever. So if it's sold for same house, why would you want to spend a lot of money in the house, remodeling it, making it like granite and stuff? And if the buyer or they can buy in the same house in the other block, why would they purchase your house basically? Unless it's something really unique. So it's just in a summary, the value of opinion is different in terms of appraisers than the realtors. That's what I found out, because they're like not completely, but they're like way off when it comes to like valuation. They think it's if you put like a gold plated cabinets or whatever, the value is gonna go way high. This is not mostly the case. So, that's.
In a townhouse area, when realtors, we usually do some comps, right, to get.
Right.
In a townhouse area, you take the community, or you just to compare, or you take another neighbor communities?
Yeah, we have to.
If you don't find comps.
Yeah, no, I got your point, but nowadays we have to take maybe few sales within the community subdivision, but at least one or two sales have to be from outside, because they want to see what's going on in the competitive market. Or because if you find like in condominiums,
Even though there is a big highway
it
crossing?
doesn't matter.
Oh, okay.
You have to define in the appraisal, because if it's within 1 mile radius, because sometimes it's close to, the house is right next to 66 or 495, and there are similar communities across 495 or 66. So you define, like in the addendum, this is what's going on. This is comparative to subject, but this is across, there's a major highway or road crossing, which is not going to affect the value in terms of the physical characteristic, or the you have to make, like in a condominium, like I was saying, it's the same building. You can find a lot of sales within 6 months or 1 year, but that's what they recommend, like find another sale from competing building. So if you find everything within same thing, that's just not justifying the value, because sales, maybe it's a brand new building, and sometimes the condominiums, especially in DC area, right next to it, this was built in 2017, next door is built in 1890s, for example. So, you have to find out what the buyers will pay for 2 bedrooms, within this market area.
And what do you do when you find let's say in the same scenario, townhouses, you see 250, 240, 255, 250, 240, and then you find 160 REO property?
That's yeah. So you're looking at arm's length transaction.
I mean that there are some peaks in the.
Yeah, back in 2008, this was common. You have, you cannot ignore all of these REO properties. But 2008 and onward, I'm sure you're familiar with that, the bubble era. But now it's not that common. So if you find like maybe out of 10 sales, there are 2-3 REO properties. You don't have to utilize all of these 3 REO properties where you can find similar, but it has to be, in a condominium, it has to be at least 2 bedrooms. And if you can't find it, you can stretch the radius. You can, start out within the same subdivision, I would say, stretch it out as half a mile. If that doesn't work, stretch it out as 1 mile. So particularly in the DC area, start out with half a mile. I'm definitely sure you're going to find, as an appraiser, you're going to find a lot of sales within that radius. So a lot of times the agents, they will bring sales all the way from 5 mile radius, and then they get angry. Well, you didn't use my sale. That's why the value is not there. And so when you're in DC areas, northwest, southwest, doesn't matter. Within half a mile radius, you're gonna find a lot of sales. Particularly row houses and condominiums, and even in the single-family detached houses. Like in northwest area, within 1 mile there has to be sales. It's an active market. So if you go towards rural, like farm area, you know, on 66 or somewhere like Front Royal or somewhere, then you can go up to 5 miles, you know, 24 acres, farmhouse, you know, you have to go, there's not like a lot of, you know, you have to go beyond 5 miles or sometimes even 12 miles. So that's, does that make sense?
Yeah.
And the second question is, you say you have only used half mile, but how months do you need to go back to on the first time when you try to find a?
Sure, definitely. I mean, most of the time the lenders, they recommend within 90 days.
Only 90 days?
Yeah, they recommend within 90, all these Bank of America, American Federal, like all these major, you know, lenders, they recommend within 90 days, which is obviously not all the time you're gonna find sales within 90 days. So,
If you don't find comes for half mile in 90 days, what do you go first? Time or miles?
distance.
Distance? Okay.
Yeah, if you can, you know, try to expand your search. If you can't find it within 1 mile radius, then you have to do, you know, as an appraiser, you have to define or write down comments in the addendum. You know, what's going on? Is it something unique about this property? Like you said, you know, $450,000 house, and then all of a sudden you have REO $130,000 house. Then in that sense, you gotta define it or write it in an addendum. What's going on? Is something going on, which is like, you know, maybe a stigmata attached to it, maybe some kind of a murder happened there. People, nobody wanna buy it. So just define it. You know, you expanded the search area. Now you didn't find any comps, and then you go back and then expand the time radius. You know, like maybe from 90 to within 12 months. 12 months is a limit in a sense. If you go beyond 12 months, you know, within 6 months.
But
there's
you go
so much-
directly to 3 months to 9 to 12 months?
No,
No.
1 month, another month,
Another
add
month.
another month. If you don't
Oh,
find it,
okay.
all the way up to 12 months.
Okay.
But slowly, gradually, expand in both, in a sense, time and distance.
I mean, this.
Exactly, yeah.
But first is distance, half mile
Exactly.
and goes to 1 mile.
Exactly, yeah. But don't forget, if you go beyond 1 mile, as an agent,
Probably
the
a different
appraisers,
neighborhood too.
yeah, it doesn't really matter. But like I said, the big lenders, they want to remain within 1 mile. And this mile thing, it has nothing to do with appraisal. This is just the lender, they come up with their own solution. This mile and time in appraisal, technically the appraisal is good for 24 hours. And after that, you have to do another appraisal.
The system that we use in MyRes, automatically give us 180 days. Is it 180?
Yeah.
We do CMA?
Defaults, yeah.
We default to 180.
You can change it.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But what happens if you don't find anything between 1 mile? Because you're saying the lenders required to have. right?
Definitely, yeah.
Between.
Well, that's their recommendation, but I don't think that's a hard set rule.
Exactly.
He would make a note as an appraiser saying,
Yeah.
oh, hey, I did 1 mile, I did, 180 days, I did, 12 months. I didn't find anything, so that now I'm going further out.
Yeah, like I said, this is nothing to do with appraisal. This is the lender coming up with their own criteria. Most of the one guy adopts it, the second lender adopts it, and third, all of become all of a sudden it becomes a norm. This is normal, like this HVCC law. It becomes a norm now. You have to order it from the loan person instead of
No, I have a question, kid. An appraisal do like an estimate, not going to the property based on the MIRS or any other stuff?
Right.
Like
The stop estimate.
a desktop estimate?
Yeah, of course.
That you guys charge for it? Can we call and say, you know what, I'm fine, I wanna make sure that the property is priced right, and you give me a fee and maybe the seller is willing to pay it?
Yeah, there's three different. There's BPO, which obviously you guys are
Right.
familiar with, right? BPO, people would accept that, and there's a drive-by report.
Okay.
And there's a full report, exactly.
Correct.
Anything below drive-by, like a desktop, we can do that. Any appraiser, they do that. But if you haven't seen the property from inside,
Right.
it may look very nice from outside, but you don't know what's going on. There might, like the one I did in Maryland the other day, from outside and through a peek through the window, everything looks nice. But actually, to be honest, there was a mold all the way up to here
Wow.
because the sump pump stopped working.
Okay.
And the water was there for like 2 months or something, and the mold was throughout, and the property looks very nice outside. So imagine if I were to do a valuation as a desktop appraisal or exterior only appraisal, I would come up with a fair market value, which is not true.
Right.
So you can have an overview of, what the market, in a sense, if the property was in normal condition, this is what the value would be if the property would be in normal condition. That's what we write in the report too. This is just an exterior only overview, hypothetical condition, like if the property was in good condition. So, desk review, BPO, they are just an opinion of a market value in that neighborhood. But the full report, the appraiser goes in, look at the condition, look at the, what type of, construction it is.
I have another question. I know based on FHA loans, the appraisal can give recommendations to fix the property.
Yeah.
And I see it done on conventional as well, but I haven't seen them, I saw it twice already.
For the conventional, FHA, they're pretty, the HUD,
Right.
they're pretty strict with their guidelines, because they're thinking from the eyes of a child. The children doesn't know what's safe, what's not safe, and, the wires are hanging from
Right.
from the wall, even the step up, there has to be a warning or something, either cleared. So basically, they're looking for, how safe is it for our children to live in it, or anybody to live in this house, from the safety and hazard standard point of view.
And for conventional, there's no.
For conventional, in a sense, you don't compare it in that sense. But if if the roof is missing,
Oh, yeah.
I've seen a house, everything looks good in DC. You go to one house, there's like a blue cover.
Yeah.
It's like, and it was moving, and I asked the homeowner, "What the heck is this, man? Is there something in there?" He said, "No, nothing. It was just leaking." And then I had to open it, and found out you can see the sky. Yeah, you can see the sky through it. So in that sense, obviously, this is it was a conventional.
Right.
And I just, my name is on the report, I
Right.
just didn't want to pass it on. So I had to peek through it, even though, the homeowner was consistent, this is nothing. This is not a government loan, just do your job and get out.
Oh my
But
God.
no, yeah, I've done so many of these, so I know what's going on inside, So anyway, there is a difference, but, not in a sense where you check everything,
Right.
like what you do in a FHA,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah.
I have a slightly technical question. When you're looking at the value of the comparable homes to try and come up with your figures, I'm just curious, do you rely more on the mean or the median prices?
Like I said, in an appraisal sense, we don't go by mean or median because this is a big no-no. And that's what they teach us in the continuing education courses. Because appraisal is an opinion of value. If we were to come up with the average of everything, then where's our thought? Where is our expertise exactly? So we don't look at in a sense where it's mean or median. Just look at how if you go through the comparables page, there's different characteristics. So you make adjustment based on what kind of condition it is, what age, the site, how big or how low, but you definitely don't want to compare it as a mean or median because that would not be an appraisal. That
Right,
would
right.
be just not be fair, I guess. Yeah. So, but yeah. So the one thing I would like normally you get is normally you get from the agents is the comparables. They bring their own list, which no appraiser had any problem with that. The only thing is they just need to realize that the criteria I told you about has to be within 90 days or at least 12 months and within 1 mile radius. Like if you can't find anything, then you can expand beyond. But the property has to be kind of a rural or farmhouse or something like a unique property, or but in a metropolitan area, I'm sure you can find something similar in most of the houses that you appraise.
I'm sorry to interrupt, I know you guys probably have some questions. In the conference room that we have, there's some pizza for everyone, there's some Coke, so you can grab some pizza and Cokes. Continue to ask this guy questions. If you're hungry as well,
No,
feel
thank
free
you.
to grab some.
Thank you.
But I think you might have had a question?
for her, you know.
I have a question. How you put the grades on, like, when the condition, sometimes I see C3 or
Right.
C2, how you know, and what is the best, C3 or C1 in the report?
Yeah, that's actually general, in a general purpose form, this is not there, this is from Fannie Mae. So Fannie Mae come up with this, condition guidelines, and they want a liability to be, to put on somebody, so the appraisers, they're basically to blame for it. So that if you use Fannie Mae form, the C1 all the way up to C6. So C1 is basically a new construction. It's either in the process of being built, or it's completely nothing there, it's just a, structure being built. C2 is everything is, is maybe 4 to 5 year old house. C3 is a normal, maybe 10 to 15 year old normal looking condition. Anything beyond C3 would be, you need to make proper adjustment, because it has to be like a, maintenance required or deferred maintenance. So all the way up to C6 would be like a shell. It's not a, you cannot live in a house with which is described as C6. Or C5 would be,
More than C3, you say? It's
yeah,
the same.
beyond C3 would be some issues with the house, meaning,